If you live in Seattle and love trains, you don't have to save your big rail adventures for a once-a-year vacation. In this video, I'm going to show you how you could use the Amtrak Rail Pass to turn Seattle into your home base for 4 different weekend rail trips. Up to Canada, down to Portland, into the mountains, and all the way out to Glacier National Park. We'll walk through the exact routes, how many pass segments each weekend would use, what is covered by the pass, what still costs extra, and even what you need to cross the border into Vancouver. By the end, you'll know whether a Rail Pass makes sense as your Seattle rail season ticket for a month of weekend trips, and which of these 4 weekends you'd want to copy first. So, here's the idea. You're based in Seattle, you've got a fairly normal work schedule, and instead of burning one giant 2-week vacation, you want to stack a bunch of shorter rail trips across a month. The Amtrak Rail Pass gives you 10 coach segments in 30 days on most Amtrak routes in the United States. That's enough to turn Seattle into a hub and string together 4 1 to 2 night weekends without quitting your job or moving on to a train full-time. In this episode, I'm going to focus on 4 realistic weekend trips you can actually pull off from Seattle. Weekend 1, Seattle to Vancouver, BC on the Cascades. Weekend 2, Seattle to Portland, Oregon. Weekend 3, a mountain weekend to Leavenworth or Spokane on the Empire Builder. Weekend 4, a big bucket list style, ride out to Glacier National Park and back. I'll show you how each weekend looks on the map, how many segments it uses from your pass, and where you'll still need to budget for hotels, food, shuttles, and border rules. Let's start with the easiest way to make this pass feel international. A weekend in Vancouver, BC. The plan is simple. You take the Cascades train from Seattle up to Vancouver, BC, spend 1 or 2 nights downtown, and then ride the Cascades back home. That's 2 segments on your rail pass, 1 northbound, 1 southbound. Travel time is roughly half a day each way, so you can comfortably leave Seattle in the morning, roll into Vancouver in the early afternoon, and still have time to check into your hotel, walk the seawall, or head over to Granville Island before dinner. Because this is a cross-border train, you do need a valid passport, and you'll go through border formalities as part of the trip. The Rail Pass covers your train ticket on the Cascades, but it does not handle your passport, your hotel bill, or any local transit or tours once you're in Canada. If you want a simple headline for this weekend, it's "No car cross-border city break." The pass gets you there and back in coach. You bring the passport and the spending money. Weekend number 2 keeps you in the Pacific Northwest, but heads south instead of north, Seattle to Portland. Here you've got options. You can stick with the Cascades train for a classic regional ride, or you can time it so you're on the Coast Starlight and get a taste of long-distance Amtrak, even if you're only riding the short Seattle-Portland segment. Either way, you're usually looking at around 3.5 hours in each direction. That's another 2 pass segments, 1 down, 1 back. You can leave Seattle after work on a Friday, roll into Portland in time for a late dinner, and then come back Sunday evening after a weekend of coffee, food carts, breweries, and maybe a quick trip out toward the gorge. Again, the Rail Pass covers the coach ticket on either Cascades or the Coast Starlight for that short hop. What's not covered is everything on the ground: your hotel, your meals, any rideshare or transit around Portland, and any tours you tack on. If you want to show off a variety of equipment in 1 month, this is a nice place to mix things up. Maybe Cascades one way for the regional vibe, Coast Starlight the other way for that classic long-distance consist. Weekend number 3 is where we leave the coast and head inland into the mountains. Here, you've got a fork in the tracks. One option is Leavenworth or Wenatchee, depending on scheduling. You board the Empire Builder from Seattle and ride into a faux Bavarian mountain town or a Columbia River Valley stop that feels worlds away from the city. If you want to go farther, you can ride the Empire Builder all the way to Spokane for a longer, more traditional small city weekend in eastern Washington. Either way, the pattern is the same. Out on the Empire Builder on Friday or Saturday, 1 or 2 nights in town, and back to Seattle on the Builder at the end. That's another 2 pass segments, Seattle to your inland stop, and back again. The Rail Pass covers your coach seat on the Empire Builder, but not your hotel in Leavenworth, Wenatchee, or Spokane. Not any local shuttles or taxis. And not your meals off the train. This is your mountain weekend by rail option. You're not crossing a border this time, but you are crossing into a very different landscape without touching a steering wheel. Weekend number 4 is the big swing. Seattle to Glacier National Park on the Empire Builder. This is the kind of trip that makes the U.S. Rail Pass feel like a real value play. You board the Empire Builder in Seattle in the evening, ride overnight through some of the most scenic parts of the route, and wake up near Glacier National Park, at stops like West Glacier, East Glacier, or Whitefish, depending on the time of year and your exact plan. From there, you've got 1 or 2 nights to explore the park area before you get back on the Empire Builder for another overnight ride back to Seattle. That's 2 more pass segments, 1 outbound overnight, 1 inbound overnight. There are a couple of important caveats here. The U.S. Rail Pass only books you into coach. If you want a roomette or other sleeper accommodation for those overnights, you're paying extra out-of-pocket to upgrade. You can't use the pass to cover a sleeper. You'll also need a real budget for everything around Glacier: hotels or lodges, park shuttles or tours, food, and any activities inside the park. But if you've watched my other Empire Builder and Glacier content, you already know this leg is a highlight. Using the pass for both overnight rides lets you spend more of your cash on the park stay instead of on the base rail fare. Now let's zoom out and be really clear about what the U.S. Rail Pass does and doesn't cover on these 4 weekends. On the covered side, all of the train rides I've talked about here are on routes that accept the U.S. Rail Pass and coach: Seattle to Vancouver, BC on the Cascades, Seattle to Portland on Cascades or the Coast Starlight, Seattle to Leavenworth, Wenatchee, or Spokane on the Empire Builder, Seattle to Glacier National Park, and back on the Empire Builder. Each direction of each trip uses 1 segment, so a simple out and back weekend is 2 segments. If you did all 4 weekends as straightforward out and backs, that's 8 segments total, still under the 10-segment limit for your 30-day pass window. On the extra side, you are still paying cash for hotels and lodges in Vancouver, Portland, the mountain towns, and Glacier. All your meals, any local transit, taxis, rideshares, or park shuttles, any tours or activities you book at the destination, and any upgrades from coach into business class or sleepers, especially on those Empire Builder overnights, where a roomette can make a huge comfort difference. Think of the pass as your month-long ticket for the rails themselves. Everything around the train is still a normal travel budget problem you have to plan for. Because one of these weekends crosses into Canada, there's one more set of rules we have to talk about: the border. To ride the Cascades between Seattle and Vancouver, BC, you must meet the usual US-Canada border requirements. That means having a valid passport or other accepted travel document, and making sure you're eligible to enter Canada and return to the United States. The USA Rail Pass does not change any of that. The pass also doesn't cover any border fees, customs issues, or travel insurance. It simply covers the rail fare portion on that Cascades train, the same way it does on your Empire Builder and Coast Starlight weekends. So in your head, separate those 2 things. The pass answers: do I have a train ticket for this segment? Your passport and your own research answer: am I legally allowed to cross this border and come back? So if we put this all together, here's what a Seattle-based rail season with 1 U.S. Rail Pass might look like. Weekend 1. Cross-border city break to Vancouver, BC. Weekend 2. Food and culture weekend in Portland. Weekend 3. Mountain weekend to Leavenworth, Wenatchee, or Spokane on the Empire Builder. Weekend 4. Big overnight adventure to Glacier National Park and back. All 4 of those are coach rides the pass can cover. And all 4 can fit inside the same 30-day window if you plan your dates carefully. You could also spread them out and save a couple of segments for bonus day trips. But even at this basic level, you're getting a lot of mileage out of 1 pass. From a content perspective, I love this structure because it shows how flexible the U.S. Rail Pass can be. 1 month, 1 hub city, 4 totally different styles of weekend, all anchored in Seattle. If you found this helpful, or if you want to see me actually ride these trips with a camera in my hand, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which of these 4 weekends you'd book first with a rail pass. I'm keen on the rails. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next train out of Seattle.